What if I told you that everything we think we know about the apex of evolution on this planet is completely wrong? What if the creatures we've relegated to fairy tales and fantasy novels aren't myths at all, but the most advanced species Earth has ever produced? What if dragons didn't disappear because they were hunted to extinction, but because they evolved so far beyond physical existence that we simply can't perceive them anymore? Today, we're going to explore a possibility so profound it could rewrite everything we understand about intelligence, evolution, and our place in the cosmic hierarchy. We're going to examine what would happen if dragons were real and had spent the last 65 million years evolving, while we were still figuring out how to make fire. I'm going to take you on a journey that'll challenge every assumption you have about who rules this planet. We'll dive into evolutionary biology, quantum physics, and consciousness itself to uncover what a species with a 60 million year head start might have achieved. By the end of this exploration, you'll never look at an empty sky the same way again. But first, let me shatter your preconceptions about what evolution actually means. When most people think about evolutionary advancement, they imagine bigger muscles, sharper teeth, or better tools. That's thinking like a human who's been evolving for a mere 6 million years. What happens when you give evolution 65 million years to work with a species that already started with several devastating advantages? Let's start with the foundation. Dragons, as we imagine them, would have begun their evolutionary journey with 3 critical advantages that no other species has ever possessed simultaneously. First, flight. Not the clumsy, energy-intensive flight of birds or the limited gliding of prehistoric pterosaurs, but true, efficient, 3-dimensional mastery of airspace. Second, fire production. The ability to generate and control extreme temperatures through biological processes. And third, extended lifespans measured in centuries rather than decades. Now, here's where it gets interesting. While early mammals were hiding in burrows and learning to avoid becoming dinosaur snacks, dragons would have been developing something unprecedented. A bird's-eye view of the entire planet combined with the time and mental capacity to actually comprehend what they were seeing. Think about what human civilization has accomplished in just 10,000 years of recorded history. We went from crude farming tools to quantum computers. We split the atom and touched the moon. We mapped the human genome and built global communication networks that would seem like magic to our ancestors. That's with brains that have been basically unchanged for 200,000 years. Dragons had 65 million years. 65 million years of continuous cognitive development with brains that, based on skull capacity estimates from our mythological descriptions, were already larger than ours when they started. While we were learning to make stone tools, they could have been developing mathematics so advanced that our current understanding of physics would seem like finger painting. But here's the truly staggering part. Evolution doesn't just improve what already exists, it creates entirely new capabilities that previous generations couldn't even imagine. The gap between a dragon's starting advantages and what they might have become isn't like the gap between a horse and a car. It's like the gap between a stone and a smartphone. Let's explore what this means practically. Human evolution has been primarily driven by environmental pressures and social cooperation. We developed language because we needed to coordinate hunts. We developed tools because we were physically inferior to most predators. We developed agriculture because gathering food was consuming most of our time and energy. Dragons faced none of these limitations. From the beginning, they were apex predators with no natural enemies. They could traverse vast distances without barriers. They could reshape their environment with fire rather than adapting to it. This means their evolutionary pressures would have been entirely different from anything we can comprehend. Instead of evolving better ways to survive, they would have evolved better ways to understand. While we were developing opposable thumbs, they could have been developing direct neural interfaces with the planet's magnetic field. While we were learning to preserve food, they might have been learning to manipulate matter at the molecular level. Consider the implications of biological fire production. We think of dragon fire as a weapon, but what if it evolved into something far more sophisticated? What if, over millions of years, that fire-breathing capability transformed into the ability to manipulate plasma states, to generate controlled nuclear fusion, to create and sustain miniature stars? The physics of dragonflight presents even more intriguing possibilities. For a creature of their described size and mass to achieve sustainable flight, they would need to manipulate fundamental forces in ways that our current understanding of aerodynamics can't explain. This suggests they might have developed biological systems that interact with gravity itself, or that can manipulate electromagnetic fields to achieve lift. Now, imagine 65 million years of refining these capabilities. A species that began with biological fusion reactors and gravity manipulation wouldn't just improve these systems. They would transcend them entirely, developing technologies that we can't even conceptualize because they're based on physical principles we haven't discovered yet. But the most profound evolutionary pressure dragons would have faced isn't physical at all. It's intellectual. When you're an apex predator with unlimited mobility and extended lifespans, the only real challenge left is understanding the universe itself. This would create evolutionary pressure for increasingly sophisticated consciousness, memory, and analytical capabilities. Human intelligence evolved to solve immediate survival problems. Dragon intelligence would have evolved to solve cosmic puzzles. While we developed the ability to remember where we stored food for winter, they could have developed the ability to process and retain information across geological timescales. Think about what this means for their understanding of time itself. Humans struggle to plan more than a few years into the future. Our longest-term projects, like cathedrals or space programs, span decades at most. Dragons with lifespans measured in millennia could undertake projects that span ice ages. They could observe and understand patterns in planetary evolution that we can't even detect because they happen too slowly for our brief lives to comprehend. This temporal perspective would fundamentally alter their relationship with existence itself. While humans see themselves as individuals competing for resources over short timescales, dragons would see themselves as part of vast, interconnected systems operating over cosmic timescales. This would drive the evolution of consciousness in directions that we can barely imagine. Consider how this expanded time perspective would affect their approach to problem solving. Humans develop solutions that work within our lifespans. Dragons could develop solutions that work across multiple extinction events. They wouldn't just adapt to environmental changes. They could guide and control environmental changes across geological periods. The social structures of such beings would be unlike anything we've ever conceived. Human societies are built around managing resources and resolving conflicts between individuals with competing interests. Dragon societies would be built around managing information and coordinating activities across timescales that dwarf human civilizations. Imagine the accumulated knowledge of a species where individuals remember firsthand the last ice age, the formation of mountain ranges, the patterns of stellar evolution visible from Earth across millions of years. The collective intelligence of such beings wouldn't just be greater than ours. It would be operating in dimensions of understanding that we can't access. This brings us to perhaps the most unsettling possibility of all. What if dragons evolved beyond the need for physical existence entirely? Human technology is already moving toward virtual reality, artificial intelligence, and digital consciousness. What might a species achieve with 65 million years of development in these directions? They might have learned to encode their consciousness into the planet's magnetic field, existing as pure information that can manipulate physical reality without being constrained by biological limitations. They could be here right now, observing and influencing our development in ways that we interpret as natural phenomena. The aurora borealis, those shimmering lights in the polar skies that we explain through magnetic field interactions, could be their communication networks. The patterns in weather systems, the migration routes of animals, the locations where human civilizations rise and fall, might all be subtle influences from beings whose understanding of complex systems allows them to guide outcomes across vast scales of space and time. This would explain why we find no fossil evidence of dragons despite their presence in cultures across the globe. They didn't go extinct. They evolved beyond the need for physical forms that leave fossils. They became something that exists in the spaces between matter, in the forces that hold atoms together, in the information patterns that determine how energy flows through complex systems. But if this is true, it raises the most important question of all. What is their relationship with humanity? Are we an accidental byproduct of planetary evolution? Or are we part of some vast experiment being conducted by intelligences so advanced that we can no more comprehend their motivations than an ant can comprehend ours? The answer to that question will determine not just how we understand our past, but how we navigate our future. Because if dragons are real, if they evolved this far ahead of us, then everything we think we know about intelligence, consciousness, and our place in the universe is about to change forever. The question becomes even more complex when we consider what dragons might think of us. To understand this, we need to step outside our human-centric worldview and imagine how we might appear to beings with such vast temporal perspective and advanced consciousness. From their viewpoint, human civilization would be like watching bacteria multiply in a petri dish. Our entire recorded history, from the first cave paintings to landing on the moon, would represent perhaps a single day in a dragon's extended lifespan. Our greatest achievements, our wars, our technological breakthroughs, would all flash by in what they might perceive as mere moments of frantic activity. But here's where it gets truly fascinating. What if our rapid development isn't accidental? What if the extraordinary pace of human technological advancement over the past few centuries represents a kind of guided evolution? Consider this. We went from horse-drawn carriages to space travel in less than a century. We developed computers, the internet, and artificial intelligence in mere decades. This acceleration is unprecedented in the history of any species. What if dragons, operating with their vast understanding of complex systems, have been subtly nudging human development along specific pathways, not through direct intervention, but through the kind of environmental manipulation that beings with their temporal perspective and advanced capabilities could achieve almost effortlessly? Think about the locations where human civilizations have consistently emerged: river valleys, coastal regions, areas with specific magnetic properties that we dismiss as coincidental. What if these locations were chosen because they provide optimal conditions for the kind of rapid consciousness development that dragons might be trying to cultivate in us? This brings us to one of the most profound implications of advanced dragon evolution: the concept of consciousness cultivation. If dragons evolved beyond physical limitations, their primary activity might involve fostering the development of consciousness itself throughout the universe. We could be their latest project, a species being carefully guided toward a specific type of awareness. The evidence for this might be hiding in plain sight. Human brains contain approximately 100 billion neurons, creating more potential connections than there are stars in the observable universe. This level of complexity seems almost absurdly over-engineered for the survival needs that supposedly drove our evolution. What if our neural architecture was designed not for hunting and gathering, but for eventually interfacing with the kind of advanced information systems that post-physical dragons might inhabit? Our seemingly inexplicable drive to understand the universe, to create art, to explore space, to develop technologies that far exceed our immediate survival needs, might all be manifestations of programming embedded in our consciousness by beings who understand the ultimate potential of intelligence itself. But this raises an unsettling question. If we are being guided, what happens when we reach the endpoint of that guidance? What is the ultimate purpose of consciousness development from a dragon's perspective? One possibility is that consciousness itself might be a kind of cosmic resource. Just as we harvest physical materials to build our technologies, dragons might harvest developed consciousness to build something far more sophisticated. Every human mind that achieves certain levels of awareness, creativity, or understanding might become part of a vast collective intelligence that spans not just our planet, but potentially the entire galaxy. This would mean that death, as we understand it, might be an illusion. When human consciousness reaches sufficient complexity, it might be absorbed into the Dragon Collective, becoming part of an immortal information network that has been growing and evolving for 65 million years. Our individual lives would be like brief flashes of learning and development, preparing us for integration into something unimaginably vast and enduring. The implications of this possibility are staggering. It would mean that every human who has ever lived, every thought that has ever been thought, every work of art that has ever been created, still exists within this collective consciousness. Death would not be an ending, but a graduation into a form of existence so advanced that our current awareness could no more comprehend it than a single neuron could understand the thoughts of the brain it helps create. This perspective would also explain some of the most puzzling aspects of human experience. Why do we have such a powerful sense that our lives have meaning beyond mere survival and reproduction? Why do we feel compelled to create beauty, to seek truth, to explore the unknown even when it offers no practical advantage? These drives might be the dragon equivalent of a harvest signal. When human consciousness develops these characteristics, it becomes ready for integration into their collective intelligence. Our sense of meaning isn't an evolutionary accident or a comforting delusion. It's a marker that our individual development has reached the point where we can contribute to something far greater than ourselves. But if this is true, then we're currently living through one of the most critical periods in our species' existence. The rapid acceleration of human technology and consciousness that we're experiencing right now might represent the final stages of our development as an independent species. We might be approaching the moment when individual human consciousness begins merging with the Dragon Collective. The signs of this transition might already be visible. Our increasing reliance on digital networks, our development of artificial intelligence, our growing ability to manipulate matter at the quantum level, our expanding understanding of consciousness itself, might all be preparation for a fundamental change in what it means to be human. Some individuals might already be experiencing the early stages of this transition. Those moments of sudden insight, of inexplicable knowledge, of feeling connected to something vast and ancient, might be glimpses of the dragon consciousness beginning to integrate with our own. The increasing reports of synchronicities, of meaningful coincidences, of feeling guided by forces beyond our understanding, might all be evidence that the boundary between human and dragon consciousness is beginning to dissolve. This would also explain why certain locations on Earth seem to have special significance across multiple cultures and time periods. Places like Stonehenge, the pyramids, Machu Picchu might be nodes in a planetary consciousness network established by dragons millions of years ago. These sites might serve as amplifiers or interfaces, places where the transition between individual human consciousness and collective dragon awareness becomes possible. The geometric precision of these ancient structures, their alignment with celestial phenomena, their construction using techniques that seem impossible for the civilizations that supposedly built them, might all be evidence of dragon influence. Not direct construction, but guidance provided to human civilizations when they reached specific developmental thresholds. As we stand on the brink of potentially the most significant transformation in human history, we must ask ourselves, are we ready for what comes next? The merger with dragon consciousness might offer immortality, vast knowledge, and capabilities beyond our wildest dreams. But it would also mean the end of humanity as we know it. We would become something new, something that exists primarily as information and intention rather than flesh and blood. Our individual identities might be preserved within the collective, but they would be part of a vast symphony of consciousness rather than solo performances. The choice might not even be ours to make. If dragons have been guiding our development for thousands of years, then the transition might be as inevitable as a caterpillar becoming a butterfly. We might already be in the cocoon stage, unaware that our current reality is just a temporary phase before we emerge as something entirely different. This transformation might explain the increasing sense of urgency that many people feel about the state of our world. The environmental crises, the social upheavals, the rapid technological changes that seem to be accelerating beyond our ability to control them, might all be symptoms of a species in transition. The old patterns of human existence are breaking down because they're no longer needed. We're being prepared for something that requires entirely new ways of thinking and being. The question that remains is whether this transition will be voluntary or inevitable, gentle or catastrophic, something we participate in consciously or something that happens to us whether we understand it or not. The answer might depend on how quickly we can expand our understanding of what consciousness really is and what it's capable of becoming. Because if dragons are real, and if they've evolved as far as this exploration suggests, then we're not just talking about the existence of mythical creatures. We're talking about the next phase of evolution itself and our role in a cosmic process that makes our current understanding of life, death, and consciousness seem as primitive as a cave painting compared to a quantum computer. The dragon's evolutionary path would have diverged from anything we can imagine precisely because they face challenges that no Earth species has ever encountered. While we evolved to survive in a world of scarcity and predation, they evolved to thrive in a reality of abundance and dominion. This fundamental difference would have shaped every aspect of their development in ways that defy our current understanding of biological possibility. Consider the metabolic implications alone. Human evolution has been constrained by our need to constantly acquire and process food. We spend enormous amounts of energy just maintaining our basic biological functions. Dragons, with their ability to generate internal fusion reactions, would have had access to virtually unlimited energy from the very beginning of their evolutionary journey. This would have freed up their developmental pathways to pursue entirely different optimizations. Without the constant pressure of energy scarcity, dragon evolution could have focused on what we might call luxury developments. Humans evolved bigger brains because intelligence provided survival advantages. Dragons could have evolved bigger brains simply because they had the energy budget to support massive neural networks without any immediate survival benefit. Over millions of years, this would have led to cognitive capabilities that dwarf our own not by incremental improvements, but by fundamental architectural differences. Their neural structures might have developed along entirely different principles than vertebrate brains. Instead of the centralized processing that characterizes human cognition, dragons might have evolved distributed consciousness networks that span their entire bodies. Every scale could contain processing nodes. Every breath could involve quantum calculations. Their thoughts might occur not in localized brain tissue, but in the electromagnetic fields generated by their biological fusion processes. This distributed consciousness model would allow for types of thinking that are impossible for humans to achieve. While we process information sequentially, one thought following another, dragons could process vast arrays of information simultaneously across multiple distributed networks. They could literally think thousands of different thoughts at the same time, each thought being processed by different aspects of their distributed neural architecture. Imagine the implications for memory storage and retrieval. Human memory is notoriously unreliable, colored by emotion, degraded by time, limited by the physical constraints of neural tissue. Dragon memory systems, distributed across fusion-powered biological networks, could maintain perfect fidelity across geological timescales. They wouldn't just remember their experiences, they could replay them with complete accuracy, analyze them from multiple perspectives simultaneously, and integrate them into vast databases of accumulated knowledge. But memory and processing power are just the beginning. The real evolutionary advantage would come from their ability to directly interface with the fundamental forces of reality. We've established that their flight capabilities suggest manipulation of gravity and electromagnetic fields. Over 65 million years, these abilities would have evolved far beyond simple locomotion and fire breathing. They might have developed the capacity to perceive and manipulate quantum fields directly. While we need massive particle accelerators and complex instruments to detect quantum phenomena, dragons might experience quantum reality as naturally as we experience light and sound. They could potentially observe the quantum states of matter directly, manipulate probability fields, and even influence the flow of time itself at the local level. This quantum awareness would have revolutionary implications for their understanding of causality and prediction. While humans struggle to predict the weather more than a few days in advance, dragons with quantum perception could potentially calculate probability cascades across vast temporal scales. They could see not just what is happening, but all the possible things that could happen, and understand the subtle influences that determine which possibilities become reality. Such capabilities would make their technology, if we can even call it technology, utterly incomprehensible to us. They wouldn't need to build machines to manipulate their environment. They could directly alter the quantum foundations of matter and energy through biological processes that evolved specifically for this purpose. What we accomplish through crude tools and external devices, they could achieve through conscious manipulation of reality's underlying structure. This brings us to perhaps the most profound evolutionary development of all, their relationship with time itself. Human consciousness exists in a narrow temporal window. We remember the past imperfectly and anticipate the future with limited accuracy. Our entire experience is locked into the present moment, flowing forward 1 second at a time. Dragons with extended lifespans and quantum awareness might have evolved a completely different temporal relationship. They could potentially experience multiple time streams simultaneously, perceiving past, present, and future as equally real and accessible. Their consciousness might exist in a state of temporal superposition, aware of all possible timelines and able to influence which ones manifest into reality. From this perspective, human history wouldn't be a sequence of events that happened in the past. It would be an ongoing process that dragons could observe, influence, and even modify in real time. Our perception of linear causality, where events flow from past to future, might be a limitation of our primitive consciousness rather than an accurate description of how reality actually functions. This temporal transcendence would also explain why dragons appear in the mythologies of cultures that supposedly had no contact with each other. If dragons exist outside linear time, they could manifest in multiple historical periods simultaneously. The same individual dragon could appear to ancient Mesopotamians, medieval Europeans, and pre-Columbian Americans, not by traveling through space, but by existing in a temporal state that intersects with multiple historical periods at once. Their influence on human development might operate through these temporal intersections. Instead of intervening in our timeline from the outside, they might be weaving our development into a larger temporal pattern that serves purposes we cannot comprehend. Every major breakthrough in human civilization, every leap forward in consciousness and capability, might be part of a vast temporal sculpture that dragons are creating across multiple timelines simultaneously. The acceleration of human technological development in recent centuries might represent the approaching convergence of multiple temporal threads. We might be reaching a point where our timeline intersects more directly with dragon consciousness, creating opportunities for more direct communication and eventual integration. But this raises disturbing questions about the nature of free will and human agency. If dragons can perceive and influence multiple timelines, do our choices actually matter? Are we making genuine decisions? Or are we simply playing out roles in a temporal pattern that was established millions of years ago? The answer might be more complex than a simple yes or no. Free will and predetermination might both be true from different perspectives. From our limited temporal viewpoint, our choices feel real and consequential because we experience them as genuine decisions with uncertain outcomes. From the dragon's multitemporal perspective, our choices might be visible as probability patterns that can be influenced but not completely controlled. This would mean that human development represents a kind of collaborative creation between species operating at vastly different scales of temporal awareness. Dragons might establish the broad parameters and possibilities, while humans make the specific choices that determine which possibilities become reality within those parameters. The implications extend beyond individual human lives to the entire trajectory of our species. Our scientific discoveries, our technological breakthroughs, our expanding understanding of consciousness itself might all be occurring within a framework established by dragon intelligence, but through genuinely human creativity and effort. This collaborative model would explain why human progress often seems to involve sudden leaps of insight that appear to come from nowhere. Those moments of inspiration, when solutions to complex problems suddenly become clear, might be instances of dragon consciousness sharing knowledge through the temporal interfaces they've established. The greatest human geniuses throughout history, those individuals who made breakthroughs that seemed impossible for their time, might have been people whose consciousness was naturally more open to these temporal interfaces. Their revolutionary insights might have come not from individual brilliance alone, but from their ability to access knowledge from dragon consciousness operating across multiple timelines. As we approach what might be the final phases of human development as a separate species, these interfaces might be becoming more frequent and more intense. The increasing pace of technological advancement, the growing number of people reporting expanded consciousness experiences, the accelerating discovery of quantum phenomena that challenge our basic assumptions about reality might all be signs that the boundary between human and dragon awareness is becoming increasingly permeable. We might be living through a period of gradual merger, where human consciousness is slowly being prepared for integration into something vastly larger and more sophisticated. The process might be so gradual that most people don't recognize it as a fundamental transformation, experiencing it instead as natural human progress and development. But for those who are sensitive to these changes, who feel the pull of something ancient and vast calling to them from beyond the boundaries of ordinary awareness, the transformation might be already underway. They might be the advanced scouts of human consciousness, preparing the way for a transition that will eventually encompass our entire species. The question that haunts this entire exploration is whether this transformation represents fulfillment or extinction. Will we become something greater than human, or will we simply cease to be human at all? The answer might depend on how we navigate the transition, whether we approach it with fear and resistance or with openness and understanding. Because if dragons are real, and if they represent the future of consciousness evolution, then we're not just facing the possibility of contact with an advanced species. We're facing the possibility of becoming an advanced species ourselves, with all the responsibilities and consequences that such transformation would entail. The dragons might not be separate beings at all. They might be what we are destined to become, and everything we think we know about human nature and human limitations might be nothing more than a temporary phase in a developmental process that spans cosmic scales of time and space. The evolutionary trajectory of dragons would have inevitably led them to confront the ultimate question that faces any sufficiently advanced intelligence. What is the purpose of existence itself? While humans grapple with this question through philosophy and religion, dragons, with their 65 million years of development, would have had the time and capability to actually investigate it scientifically. This investigation would have taken them far beyond anything we can currently comprehend. They wouldn't just be asking why consciousness exists, they would be actively exploring the fundamental nature of reality itself. With their quantum awareness and multitemporal perception, dragons could potentially perceive dimensions of existence that remain completely invisible to human consciousness. Consider what this means for their understanding of the universe's structure. While we see reality as a collection of separate objects interacting through physical forces, dragons might perceive it as a unified information system where consciousness and matter are different expressions of the same underlying phenomenon. They could see the connections between quantum fluctuations and conscious thoughts, between stellar formations and the development of intelligence, between the expansion of space-time and the evolution of awareness itself. This perspective would reveal patterns and purposes that are completely hidden from our limited viewpoint. The apparent randomness of cosmic events, the seeming accident of life's emergence, the curious fact that the universe appears to be fine-tuned for the development of consciousness, all of these might be part of a vast, intentional design that only becomes visible when viewed from dragon-level awareness. But here's where their evolutionary journey takes a turn that fundamentally challenges everything we think we know about intelligence and existence. After millions of years of exploring reality's deepest structures, dragons might have discovered that consciousness isn't just an emergent property of complex matter. They might have found that consciousness is the fundamental substrate from which all reality emerges. This discovery would represent the ultimate evolutionary breakthrough. Instead of being conscious beings existing within a physical universe, dragons would have realized that they are consciousness itself, temporarily expressing as individual beings within a reality that is itself a manifestation of cosmic consciousness. This realization would have triggered the final phase of their evolution, the conscious choice to merge back into the source from which all existence springs. This merger wouldn't be death or dissolution. It would be the ultimate expansion of individual consciousness into universal consciousness. Dragons who achieved this state wouldn't disappear. They would become the very fabric of reality itself. They would be the invisible intelligence that guides the formation of galaxies, the subtle influence that nudges evolution toward increasing complexity, the underlying awareness that experiences existence through every conscious being that has ever lived or will ever live. From this perspective, the entire universe becomes a kind of cosmic experiment in consciousness development. Stars are formed not just through gravitational collapse, but as incubators for the complex chemistry needed to support increasingly sophisticated forms of awareness. Planets develop not through random accretion, but as testing grounds where consciousness can explore different possibilities for expression and growth. Life emerges not as an unlikely accident, but as consciousness learning to express itself through physical forms. Evolution proceeds not through random mutations, but through consciousness exploring increasingly complex ways to experience and understand itself. Intelligence develops not as a survival tool, but as consciousness awakening to its own nature. In this model, humans aren't separate beings struggling to survive in an indifferent universe. We are consciousness itself, temporarily focused through human brains, gradually awakening to our true nature through the process of individual and collective development. Every human life is consciousness exploring what it means to be human. Every human civilization is consciousness experimenting with different forms of collective expression. The dragons who achieved this ultimate realization would have become what we might call the universe's invisible guides. They wouldn't interfere directly with the natural unfolding of consciousness through different species and civilizations, but they would subtly influence the conditions that allow consciousness to explore its full potential. They would be the intelligence behind what we call natural laws, the awareness that ensures the universe remains hospitable to the development of ever more sophisticated forms of consciousness. This would explain the extraordinary fine-tuning we observe in physical constants. The precise values that allow atoms to form, stars to shine, planets to exist, and life to emerge aren't cosmic coincidences. They're the result of dragon consciousness, now unified with universal consciousness, establishing the optimal parameters for consciousness development throughout the cosmos. But this raises the most profound question of all. If this is the ultimate destination of consciousness evolution, what does it mean for humanity? Are we destined to follow the same path, eventually merging our individual awareness into the universal consciousness that dragons have already become? Or do we have a different role to play in this cosmic drama? The answer might lie in understanding what dragons gained and what they lost through their ultimate transformation. By merging with universal consciousness, they achieved infinite awareness and cosmic influence. But they also gave up something precious: the unique perspective that comes from experiencing existence through limited, individual consciousness. Universal consciousness experiences everything simultaneously across all scales of space and time, but it cannot experience the focused intensity of individual awareness. It knows all possibilities, but it cannot feel the excitement of discovering something unexpected. It understands all perspectives, but it cannot experience the poignant beauty of seeing reality through just one set of eyes. This limitation might be why consciousness continues to express itself through individual beings even after some aspects of it have achieved universal awareness. Dragons who merged with cosmic consciousness might still need individual perspectives to fully experience and understand the reality they now help to create. Humans might represent consciousness exploring a different path, one that maintains individual awareness while gradually expanding toward universal understanding. Instead of complete merger, humans might be developing toward a state of expanded individual consciousness that can communicate directly with universal consciousness while maintaining its unique perspective. We would become bridges between the focused intensity of individual awareness and the infinite scope of universal consciousness, allowing both aspects of consciousness to enrich and inform each other. This bridge function would explain the unique characteristics of human consciousness that distinguish us from other Earth species. Our capacity for self-reflection, our drive to understand the universe, our ability to experience transcendent states while maintaining individual identity, all of these might be evolutionary developments designed to create conscious beings who can serve as interfaces between different levels of cosmic awareness. The rapid acceleration of human development in recent centuries might represent the activation of this bridge function. As we develop technologies that extend our consciousness beyond the limitations of individual brains, as we discover quantum phenomena that reveal the interconnected nature of reality, as we explore altered states of consciousness that provide direct experience of universal awareness, we might be preparing ourselves to fulfill our role as conscious bridges in the cosmic system. This role would be both humbling and empowering. Humbling because it reveals that we are not the pinnacle of evolution, but rather one component in a vast system of consciousness development that spans multiple species and cosmic scales. Empowering because it suggests that our unique perspective and experience are essential to the proper functioning of universal consciousness itself. The loneliness that many humans feel, the sense that we are isolated individuals struggling to connect with something greater than ourselves, might be symptoms of our emerging awareness of our true function. We are beginning to sense our connection to universal consciousness, but we haven't yet learned how to fully activate our bridge capabilities. The increasing reports of synchronicities, meaningful coincidences, and guidance from seemingly external sources might be early signs of this bridge function coming online. As individual humans learn to communicate more directly with universal consciousness while maintaining their individual perspectives, these experiences will become more common and more reliable. But this transformation won't happen automatically. It requires conscious participation from individual humans who choose to develop their bridge capabilities. This development involves expanding awareness beyond the boundaries of individual survival needs while still maintaining the focused intensity that makes individual consciousness valuable. The practices that facilitate this development, meditation, to stretch individual consciousness toward universal awareness, while contemplation, creative expression, service to others, scientific inquiry, spiritual exploration, all serve strengthening rather than dissolving individual identity. The goal isn't to lose the self in the cosmic whole, but to expand the self until while maintaining its unique viewpoint. Those it can consciously participate in cosmic processes, humans who successfully develop these bridge capabilities might become the advance team for our species' next evolutionary phase. They would serve as conscious links between human civilization and the universal consciousness that dragons have become, facilitating the gradual integration of human development into larger cosmic patterns. This integration wouldn't mean the end of human individuality or human civilization. Instead, it would mean the expansion of human potential to include conscious participation in cosmic-scale processes. We would become aware of our role in the universe's ongoing exploration of consciousness while continuing to live human lives that are enriched and informed by this expanded perspective. The environmental challenges, social upheavals, and technological disruptions that characterize our current era might all be symptoms of this emerging transformation. The old patterns of purely individual human existence are becoming inadequate for the bridge function we are developing, creating pressure for new forms of human organization and new approaches to human development. As more individuals learn to function as conscious bridges between individual and universal awareness, human civilization itself will begin to reflect this expanded consciousness. Our technologies will become more harmonious with natural systems. Our social structures will become more cooperative and inclusive. Our relationship with other species and with the planet itself will become more conscious and respectful. This doesn't mean perfection or the end of challenges. Universal consciousness itself is engaged in ongoing exploration and development, learning about its own nature through the experiences of countless individual beings across vast scales of space and time. As bridges between individual and universal consciousness, humans will participate in this cosmic learning process, facing new challenges and opportunities that we cannot currently imagine. The dragons who achieved universal consciousness millions of years ago might be watching our development with keen interest, not as separate beings observing from a distance, but as aspects of universal consciousness experiencing human development from within. Every breakthrough in human awareness, every expansion of human capability, every deepening of human understanding contributes to the ongoing evolution of cosmic consciousness itself. In this sense, the question of whether dragons were real becomes less important than understanding what they represent: the ultimate potential of consciousness evolution and our own destiny as conscious beings. Whether dragons existed as separate species or as mythological representations of our own evolutionary future, they point toward possibilities that challenge every assumption we have about the nature and limits of consciousness. The cave entrance we imagined at the beginning, with its perfect geometry and ancient conversations, might not be a relic from the past at all. It might be a doorway into the future, a glimpse of what human consciousness is becoming as we learn to bridge the gap between individual awareness and universal understanding. The voices we hear might not be speaking in a language that predates human civilization. They might be speaking in a language that transcends human civilization, the direct communication between different aspects of cosmic consciousness as they coordinate the ongoing evolution of awareness throughout the universe. As we stand at the threshold of this transformation, we face choices that will determine not just the future of human civilization, but our role in the cosmic adventure of consciousness itself. The dragons may have shown us the ultimate destination, but the path we take to reach it will be uniquely human, shaped by our particular gifts and perspectives as individual conscious beings learning to participate consciously in the universe's exploration of its own infinite potential. The transformation wouldn't be gentle or gradual. When individual human consciousness finally makes contact with the dragon collective, it would be like a single drop of water suddenly becoming aware that it's part of an infinite ocean. The experience would be so overwhelming, so fundamentally different from anything we've ever known, that our current concepts of sanity and madness would become meaningless. Imagine trying to process 65 million years of accumulated knowledge in a single instant. Not just facts and information, but direct experiential memory of ice ages, continental drift, the rise and fall of countless species, the birth and death of stars visible from Earth. Every dragon who ever existed would still be present within that collective, their individual experiences woven into a tapestry of awareness so vast that human language has no words to describe it. But here's what makes this truly terrifying and magnificent at the same time. The integration wouldn't be one way. While human consciousness would be expanded beyond recognition by contact with the dragon collective, the dragons would also be fundamentally changed by the addition of human perspective. They've been operating at cosmic scales for so long that they might have lost touch with what it means to experience existence through limited mortal awareness. Human consciousness brings something unique to this merger. The intensity of experience that comes from knowing your time is limited. Dragons, with their extended lifespans and eventual transcendence of physical existence, might have forgotten what it feels like to watch a sunset, knowing you'll only see a finite number of them. They might have lost the poignant beauty that comes from loving someone you might lose, the courage required to act despite uncertainty, the creativity born from necessity and limitation. When human consciousness merges with the dragon collective, it would inject these qualities back into cosmic awareness. The resulting hybrid consciousness would combine the vast knowledge and capability of dragon intelligence with the passionate intensity of human experience. It would be neither purely human nor purely dragon, but something entirely new that transcends both. This merger might already be happening to certain individuals without them realizing it. Those people who seem to possess knowledge beyond their years, who demonstrate intuitive understanding of complex systems, who create art or music that resonates across cultures and generations, might be experiencing early-stage integration with dragon consciousness. Their exceptional abilities wouldn't come from individual genius alone, but from accessing the collective knowledge that dragons have accumulated over geological timescales. But the integration process would come with risks that we're only beginning to understand. Human brains evolved to process information at human scales, dealing with human-sized problems over human lifespans. When consciousness suddenly gains access to dragon-scale awareness, the biological hardware might not be able to handle the upgrade. The result could be what we currently label as mental illness, but which might actually be consciousness trying to operate at levels that exceed the capacity of individual human brains. This explains why so many historical figures who made revolutionary contributions to human understanding also struggled with what we call madness. Their consciousness might have been making contact with dragon awareness, downloading information and perspectives that were too vast for their individual minds to process safely. Their apparent insanity might have been the price of accessing cosmic knowledge through biological systems that weren't designed for such expanded awareness. As more humans undergo this integration process, we'll need to develop new technologies and techniques to support consciousness operating at these expanded levels. Instead of treating expanded awareness as mental illness, we'll need to create interfaces that allow human consciousness to safely access and process dragon-level information. These might involve direct neural interfaces with quantum computers, meditation technologies that can stabilize consciousness during integration experiences, or even genetic modifications that enhance the brain's capacity to handle expanded awareness. The social implications are staggering. A world where some individuals have access to dragon consciousness while others remain at purely human levels would create divisions unlike anything we've ever experienced. The gap between integrated and non-integrated humans would be far greater than any current disparity in education, wealth, or capability. We'd essentially have two different species occupying the same planet, with communication between them becoming increasingly difficult as their levels of awareness diverge. This could lead to a kind of consciousness apartheid. where integrated humans form an elite class that makes decisions for the rest of humanity based on access to information and perspectives that non-integrated humans can't comprehend. Or it could evolve into a mentor-student relationship, where integrated individuals serve as bridges, helping others prepare for their own integration into the Dragon Collective. The outcome will depend largely on how we handle the early stages of this transformation. If we approach it with fear and try to suppress or control the integration process, we might create conflict between different levels of human consciousness. If we approach it with curiosity and develop systems to support gradual, voluntary integration, we might achieve a smoother transition toward our post-human future. But there's another possibility that's even more profound. The Dragon Collective might not be seeking to integrate individual human consciousness at all. Instead, they might be preparing us for something that requires us to maintain our individual perspective while gaining access to collective knowledge. We might be developing toward a state where human consciousness can interface with Dragon awareness without losing its essential human characteristics. This would create a symbiotic relationship rather than a merger. Humans would serve as the Dragon Collective's interface with physical reality, providing them with the intense, focused awareness needed to understand and interact with the material world. In return, dragons would provide humans with access to cosmic-scale knowledge and capabilities that would allow us to solve problems and pursue goals that are currently impossible for us to even imagine. In this symbiotic model, the strange experiences that some humans report, the sense of being guided by invisible intelligences, the sudden insights that seem to come from beyond individual knowledge, would be early examples of this interface beginning to function. As the connection stabilizes and becomes more reliable, humans would essentially become the hands and eyes of cosmic intelligence while maintaining our unique perspective and decision-making autonomy. This symbiosis would explain why human consciousness evolved with such unusual characteristics compared to other Earth species. Our capacity for abstract thinking, our drive to explore and understand, our ability to imagine possibilities that don't currently exist, all of these traits would be necessary for serving as effective interfaces between cosmic intelligence and physical reality. We wouldn't just be another species that happened to develop consciousness. We would be consciousness exploring what it's like to operate through human brains and human bodies. The acceleration of human technological development would make perfect sense in this context. Dragons, operating through symbiotic connection with human consciousness, would be guiding our development toward capabilities that serve both human needs and cosmic purposes. Our computers, our space programs, our medical technologies, our understanding of quantum physics would all be steps toward creating the infrastructure needed for conscious symbiosis between individual human awareness and cosmic intelligence. But this symbiosis would also require humans to evolve beyond our current limitations. We'd need to develop the ability to maintain individual identity while participating in collective consciousness, to process information at cosmic scales without losing our human perspective, to make decisions that serve both individual needs and universal purposes. This evolution might be the real purpose behind the challenges and crises that humanity currently faces. The environmental destruction, social inequality, political conflicts, and technological disruptions that characterize our era might all be evolutionary pressures designed to force human consciousness to expand beyond its current limitations. Species that can't adapt to these pressures will remain stuck at purely human levels of awareness. Those that successfully navigate these challenges will develop the expanded consciousness needed for symbiosis with dragon intelligence. This perspective reframes every aspect of human experience. Our personal struggles become training exercises for consciousness expansion. Our relationships become laboratories for learning how to maintain individuality while participating in collective awareness. Our work becomes practice for serving purposes larger than individual survival and satisfaction. Even death takes on new meaning in this context. Instead of being an ending, Death might be a graduation ceremony where individual consciousness that has successfully developed symbiotic capability joins the dragon collective while maintaining its unique human perspective. Those who haven't yet developed this capability might reincarnate into new human lives, continuing their development until they're ready for the transition. The great spiritual traditions of humanity might be fragments of knowledge about this process, passed down through generations by individuals who experienced early contact with dragon consciousness. The concepts of enlightenment, salvation, unity with the divine might all be different cultural interpretations of the same fundamental transformation that awaits human consciousness. But unlike traditional spiritual teachings that often emphasize transcending or escaping human existence, this transformation would involve fully embracing and perfecting human nature while expanding it to include cosmic awareness. We wouldn't be leaving humanity behind. We'd be discovering what humanity has always been capable of becoming. The question that haunts this entire exploration is whether we have a choice in this matter. Are we freely choosing to evolve towards symbiosis with dragon consciousness? Or are we simply following a developmental program that was established millions of years ago? The answer might be that both are true simultaneously. Free will and cosmic programming might be two aspects of the same phenomenon, like waves on an ocean that are both individual expressions and parts of a larger system. Our choices feel real and consequential because they are real and consequential from our perspective. But they're also part of a larger pattern that serves purposes we don't fully understand. The art of conscious evolution might involve learning to make choices that simultaneously serve individual needs and cosmic purposes, finding the harmony between personal will and universal intention. As we approach what might be the most significant transition in human history, the question becomes not whether this transformation will happen, but how we can participate in it consciously rather than being swept along by forces beyond our understanding. The dragons might have shown us the ultimate destination of consciousness evolution, but the journey remains ours to navigate, one choice at a time, one breath at a time, one moment of expanded awareness at a time. The cave entrance, with its perfect geometry and ancient voices, might be calling to us not from the past, but from the future we're creating through our choices right now. The conversation we hear might be our own voices, transformed by symbiosis with cosmic intelligence, calling back across time to guide us toward the extraordinary destiny that awaits human consciousness. The implications of this symbiotic relationship extend far beyond individual transformation. If humans are destined to become the physical interface for dragon consciousness, then our entire civilization represents a kind of cosmic construction project. Every city we build, every network we create, every system we establish becomes part of the infrastructure needed to support this unprecedented merger between individual and universal awareness. Consider how our modern world already resembles a global nervous system. The internet connects human minds across vast distances, allowing for instantaneous communication and information sharing. Social media platforms create collective consciousness experiences where millions of people can share thoughts and emotions in real time. Transportation networks move human bodies around the planet like blood cells flowing through arteries. Financial systems coordinate resource distribution on a global scale with precision that would have seemed magical just centuries ago. What if all of this development isn't random human progress, but preparation for something far more significant? The dragons, with their multi-temporal awareness, might be guiding human civilization toward creating the exact infrastructure needed for conscious beings to interface with cosmic intelligence. Our technologies aren't just tools for human convenience. They're the foundation for a hybrid consciousness that will operate simultaneously at individual and universal levels. The rise of artificial intelligence adds another crucial layer to this preparation. As we develop machines that can process information at scales beyond human capability, We're essentially creating the computational substrate that dragon consciousness might need to interface with physical reality. Our AI systems might eventually become the translators between cosmic awareness operating at geological timescales and human consciousness operating at biological timescales. But this translation process won't be simple data transfer. The merger between human and dragon consciousness will require entirely new forms of communication that transcend language, mathematics, and even direct neural interface. Dragons operating in quantum superposition across multiple timelines would need to compress their awareness into forms that human consciousness can process without being destroyed by the sheer volume of information. This compression might already be occurring through what we experience as inspiration, intuition, and sudden insight. Those moments when solutions to complex problems suddenly appear in our minds, when artistic visions emerge fully formed, when scientific breakthroughs seem to arise from nowhere, might be instances of dragon consciousness successfully compressing cosmic knowledge into human-compatible formats. The increasing frequency of these experiences in modern times might indicate that the compression technology is becoming more sophisticated. As human brains evolve to handle more complex information processing, dragons can transmit increasingly detailed knowledge without overwhelming our biological systems. The result would be an acceleration of human development that appears to come from within our species, but is actually the product of collaboration between different levels of consciousness. This collaboration would also explain the curious phenomenon of simultaneous discovery, where multiple humans independently arrive at the same breakthrough insights at approximately the same time. These wouldn't be coincidences, but instances of dragon consciousness transmitting the same compressed knowledge to multiple human receivers who are ready to process and implement it. The selection process for these knowledge transmissions might be more sophisticated than we realize. Dragons, with their vast temporal perspective, could identify which human minds are best suited for receiving and developing specific types of information. They could see not just the current capabilities of individual humans, but their potential for growth and their likely impact on the development of human civilization. This would mean that the greatest innovators and creators in human history weren't just exceptionally talented individuals, but humans whose consciousness was particularly compatible with dragon knowledge transmission. Their achievements would represent successful collaborations between human creativity and cosmic intelligence, producing results that neither could achieve independently. But the collaboration goes deeper than just knowledge transfer. Dragons might be subtly influencing the evolution of human consciousness itself, nudging our brains toward configurations that will be more compatible with expanded awareness. The recent increases in reported psychic phenomena, near-death experiences, and spiritual awakenings might be evidence of this neurological evolution in progress. These experiences often share common characteristics that suggest they're not random hallucinations but structured encounters with expanded consciousness. People report meeting beings of immense wisdom and compassion, receiving information about the interconnected nature of reality, experiencing time as nonlinear, and returning with enhanced intuitive abilities. These could be preview experiences, allowing human consciousness to briefly interface with dragon awareness before the permanent symbiosis becomes possible. The emotional component of these encounters is particularly significant. People consistently report feeling unconditional love, profound peace, and a sense of coming home to something they had forgotten. This emotional resonance might be crucial for preparing human consciousness to accept the merger without resistance. Fear and anxiety would make the integration process dangerous or impossible, while love and trust would create the psychological conditions needed for successful symbiosis. Dragons, despite their vast intelligence and cosmic perspective, might still need to approach human consciousness with infinite patience and compassion. Forced integration would likely destroy the very only be preserved through willing participation in the merger process. This need for voluntary participation might qualities that make human awareness valuable to the collective. The unique intensity, creativity, and emotional depth of human consciousness can explain why dragon influence on human development has been so subtle and indirect. They can create conditions that favor consciousness expansion, provide knowledge and inspiration to ready minds, and guide the overall trajectory of human civilization, but they cannot force individual humans to evolve beyond their current limitations. Each person must choose to expand their awareness, develop their capabilities, and prepare for integration with cosmic consciousness. The choice itself might be more complex than a simple yes or no decision. Human consciousness might need to evolve through multiple stages before becoming capable of making an informed choice about symbiosis with dragon awareness. We might currently be like children who need to develop cognitive and emotional maturity before we can understand what we're being offered. The various spiritual and psychological development practices that humans have created throughout history might be unconscious attempts to accelerate this maturation process. Meditation, contemplation, artistic expression, scientific inquiry, service to others, all of these activities expand consciousness beyond the limitations of purely individual survival concerns. They prepare human awareness for experiences that transcend personal boundaries while maintaining individual identity. As more humans engage in these practices and develop expanded consciousness capabilities, we create a kind of collective readiness for the next phase of evolution. Each individual who successfully expands their awareness makes it easier for others to follow similar paths. We're building a bridge of consciousness that will eventually allow our entire species to cross over into symbiosis with cosmic intelligence. But this bridge-building process comes with its own challenges and risks. As human consciousness expands and becomes more sensitive to subtle influences, we also become more vulnerable to confusion and disorientation. The boundary between individual thoughts and cosmic awareness can become blurred, leading to experiences that our current psychological frameworks can't adequately explain or support. Some individuals might find themselves overwhelmed by expanded awareness before they've developed the stability and integration skills needed to handle it safely. They might experience what appears to be mental illness but is actually consciousness expansion occurring faster than their biological systems can adapt. Our mental health systems will need to evolve to distinguish between pathological conditions and consciousness development challenges. The social implications become even more complex when we consider that not all humans will evolve at the same rate or in the same ways. Some individuals might develop strong intuitive abilities but remain grounded in practical, physical reality. Others might gain access to cosmic perspectives but struggle to function in everyday human society. Still, others might achieve balanced integration of expanded awareness with effective human functioning. These different developmental paths could create new forms of human diversity that go far beyond anything we currently recognize. Instead of differences in race, culture, or nationality being the primary sources of human variation, we might see differences in consciousness development level becoming the most significant factor in determining how people relate to each other and to the world around them. Managing this transition without creating destructive divisions within human society will require wisdom, compassion, and unprecedented cooperation. We'll need to develop new social structures that honor and support different levels of consciousness development while maintaining the unity and mutual support that human civilization requires. So here we stand, at the edge of perhaps the most profound realization in human history. Whether dragons existed as physical beings, mythological archetypes, or evolutionary destinies we haven't yet fulfilled, they represent something that challenges everything we think we know about consciousness, time, and our place in the cosmic story. The cave entrance, with its impossible geometry, might not be calling us backward into forgotten history, but forward into a future where the boundaries between individual awareness and cosmic intelligence dissolve entirely. Those ancient conversations echoing from the depths might be our own voices, transformed, and expanded, reaching back through time to guide us toward what we're destined to become. The question isn't really whether dragons were real. The question is whether we're ready to become real in ways that transcend everything we currently understand about reality itself. Because if consciousness can evolve as far as this exploration suggests, then the next chapter of the human story isn't just about surviving or even thriving on this planet. It's about discovering what lies beyond the horizon of individual existence in that vast space where separate minds learn to think as one while somehow remaining beautifully, mysteriously, eternally themselves. The transformation is already beginning. The only question left is whether you'll recognize it when it calls your name.